It's been a massive year for artificial intelligence, reshaping markets and the global race for tech dominance, and few companies sit closer to the center of that transformation than Palantir, whose software powers decision-making from Wall Street to the U.S. government. And here with me now is Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp. Alex, great to see you.
Great to see you too. We've been at this for a long time.
Many years, my friend.
Many years.
Let me start here. Question for investors. Maybe it's the biggest question for investors right now. AI boom, Alex, or AI bubble? A lot of smart people have different views on that. I'm curious to hear yours.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's always interesting to define what it means to be smart. But so if smart means informed, I think the debate comes down to two questions. How large is the market? And how large is the market for things that actually work? So there's really two AI markets from Palantir's perspective. People using AI, call it enhanced intelligence to do basic things, but things that are not sophisticated enough so that they would change your revenue or margins. That is a very large market. One could argue as an informed citizen that market is very large, but may not create enough value to justify the actual cost of large language models or their implementation. What we see on the ground, not as an opinion, but as like a fact, is a subset of that larger AI market I would call AI that works either in a way that it can change the battlefield, or it can change your margins, or it can change your revenue. And by the way, can do it in a way that's so quickly that you can do it in the public sphere, so you can do it as a public company. You don't have to inherently take the company private, although you can do it in the private context, or you can do it so quickly you can change things on the battlefield. That portion of the market, so the subset of AI where you can show quantifiable results, again, life and death, safety results, or results so that margins or revenue actually change dramatically and quickly enough so that you can capture the value while you're still running the company in the structure as it exists now. So it used to be, to do these things, you had to essentially isolate an institution. I want to rebuild my military. I want to rebuild a company. I want to change the trajectory of my private company. The timeline on it and what you would have, the violence involved, meant that you had to take it offline for 5 years. Okay, that's a really, and sometimes you still have to do that. What the special thing about the category we're in is you can do all that so quickly that you can show quantifiable results. And that portion of the market is expanding as a subset. So if the whole AI market is here, this was a tiny subset. That is metabolizing the rest of the AI market. And so what we see on the ground is the people are very, very receptive. Under the condition, you can show it having worked in a similar environment somewhere, anywhere on the globe. So the part of the market that is weak, that where people talk about a bubble, is in the institutional context. So not consumer internet, where you cannot show the thing having worked. That part of the market is very weak and dissipating. Now, the part of the market we're in, which is we'll show you the results quickly and we'll get paid a subset of it, that part of the market's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that part of the market is going to dominate the rest of the market in the institutional context.
Let me ask you this. So you're describing where Palantir is today, Alex. Help me understand where, you think about where Palantir could be 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And one way to think about it is that, you sometimes talk about, Alex, how AI will define the future of warfare. So let's say you talk 5 or 10 years out. I'm interested how you think about what the future battlefield will look like and what Palantir's place on that battlefield could be.
Let me kind of invert the question and say, where will America be? Because I think we're downstream from America's success. America is the only country in the world that provides everything from chips to ontology, above and below. One country. So the question is, can we grow the aggregate GDP? And can we grow the subset of GDP that affects working class people? Because that's essentially the challenge we have. We're in a unique environment where we probably can grow aggregate GDP in absolute terms, meaning GDP that affects you and me, And now we have to, can we grow it in a way that positively affects the welder, the plumber, the truck driver? So this is the core challenge for America. And then as a subset of that, because in a weird way, our ability to defend ourselves or our need to defend ourselves is going to depend on our economic strength and our military strength.
And how does AI play into that?
So first of all, something that we just have to say over and over and over again, we forget in this country, we're the only country in the world who has every part of the stack where the dominant feature of that stack is built in our country. So this is completely unique. So we have a very different problem than, say, Europe has. Europe has the problem that they don't have any part of the stack as a dominant player. Now, so the advantage for us is we have a very plausible narrative to growing our economy. The disadvantage for us is we have to show we can grow the economy in a way where the average person with a skilled job participates. Now, so how does AI happen? It depends what you mean by AI. Again, if you mean AI that you're just going to be running some query, that's very hard to see why GDP inherently grows. It's also hard to see why the plumber, the welder, the truck driver has a better job or the job they have today, but gets paid more tomorrow. And if you're doing AI the way Palantir is actually doing it on the factory floor, on the battlefield, and in corporate environments all over America, you can see that what we're doing is we're taking the welder and saying, oh, we can make you into the kind of welder that can work in a complicated environment that you could not have worked in the past. We're taking the truck driver, presumably, and saying, hey, if we reroute you this way, you're more efficient, you save energy, you actually know how to repair your truck or predictively chair, and so you are a more valuable engineer. And arguably, the most important thing is we're equipping warfighters with lethal technology that is substantially above what our adversaries have, which means our adversaries don't want to fight with us.
Do you see that remaining so in the future? The
The danger we have, honestly, in this country is just, like so many of the crazy debates we have in this country are downstream from, we have a bounty of riches. And like our issue is how do you manage that? Like it sounds like an easy problem, but just as an example, if Europe had one of these things, it would be very good at protecting it. We have so many of these things, people think it's automatic. We're automatically going to win. We can afford these internecine invites. My personal view, maybe not, I'm not saying those of everybody, we can't afford open borders and complete delusion that we can get away with a non-meritocratic society. Most of that comes from the left. But it's like, if we can't get away with diverging from our unique heritage, which is particularly valuable, like free speech, First and Second Amendment, an ability to defend ourselves. These things are especially the fact that we attract and retain the best entrepreneurs from other countries, but we already have many of the best ones here. So like every other country is scrambling to get something to work. Our problem is actually different. This problem, can we stick to the hand we have? We've been dealt a blessed hand. Are we going to screw it up? Now, and that's really our problem. Like, are we going to so regulate AI so that somehow it's easier to do it somewhere else? Are we going to eviscerate concepts like meritocracy? Because, it is like partly because, now this is where Silicon Valley could do a better job. People are nervous about meritocracy because they think it's meritocracy for me and like an oligarch for you, right? So it's like, no, it's like, does this work for everybody? Is a real, or most people, like, are we going to have a society where people believe that tomorrow is better than today? Or are we going to have a dystopian set of views because people think it's only working for Silicon Valley? What does it look like to navigate foreign environments? Can we be honest about successes and failure? I mean, can I get any progressive I know to admit that President Trump has done an amazing job in foreign policy, especially on Iran? And especially on the border.
Well, it feels like we've come to the part where I think a lot of Americans right now, Alex, on that point, I think sort of feel like I'm for kind of reflexively whatever my political opponent is against. We're
in the unique environment where we've been blessed with the most important resource in the world currently. Call it the ability from chips to ontology. like above and below. Obviously, the two most valuable things are kind of the chips and the technology. They're both here.
In this,
And so, but yes, it means we have to get out of our parochial little niche and start evaluating things on the issues. Like the bounty of riches that we have, it can be a huge danger. Like, do you know what I spent half my life in Germany. Do you know what Germany would do for our tech scene? Any country in Europe, any country in the world. Like, this is no other country has this. And by the way, it's incredibly hard to replicate because it's not, people want to believe, including in the Valley, it's like some pure IQ. It's not. It's like a way of organizing things, a way of doing things, plus IQ and other attributes. And this is somehow in this country, if you're like me, you're like, yeah, our Constitution was given to us by a higher power. We have a special role in the world. Some people don't believe that, but there's a lot of evidence for what I believe, including this whole conversation. And then the real question is, do we screw it up? And yeah, we could screw it up.
Let me ask you this: in this AI discussion we're having, investors have clearly determined, Alex, that Palantir is an AI winner. Your stock has soared. I talked to some analysts who cover Palantir. I want your reaction to this. And I'll ask them, you cover Palantir, why isn't Palantir a hold? And here's what they'll tell me. They'll say, I like Karp, I like the company, I like the tech, but it is too pricey.
Okay, great.
It's too expensive. We're at nosebleed levels. What do you say to that?
Great. How often have you been right in the past? That's literally my question. My question is...
That would be your question to the analyst.
No, I'm not going to engage on your prognostications of the future if your record... By the way, if this is... As much as I like to bash analysts and as much as many deserve it, it's really... There are analysts who are... I think some of the analysts say that. I think some of them say, look, I was wrong in the past and now I'm looking deeper. So one can't generalize even about analysts. But I would say all sorts of people who have, let's say, all sorts of people that have negative attitudes towards Palantir, or broadly defined. The quote-unquote analyst who's like, nosebleed level valuation, the quote-unquote journalist that says we're powering the surveillance state domestically, the quote-unquote person that says I'm a conspiracy, the quote-unquote person, I don't know, there's all these things. In every country there's a negative Palantir meme. What I would say to any one of them, and by the way, not just on this issue, there's persuasion and being right. One of the most important things you have to ask yourself is, how often has this person been right? And that is more important than, is it persuasive? If you, analyst, journalist, politician, if they've been right on 5 out of 6 things, and they say a 7th, I think one should assume they're likely to be right. What if they've been wrong about all those things? And by the way, where I do have a bone to pick with like traditional financial people, including their minions, the analysts, some of them, not all, is, do you know how much money you've robbed of people with your views on Palantir? Like, it's like they have all these views. There's no downside risk for their view. At what point, it's like, it really should be next to every statement. I said don't buy Palantir at 6. I said don't buy Palantir at 12. And the welder, plumber, technician who didn't buy it or sold too soon, I owe them money. And by the way, let me tell you something about Palantir that is very positive. By my reckoning, Palantir is one of the very few, if not the only, where the average American bought and the average sophisticated American sat on the sidelines or sold.
Why do you think explains that?
Yeah, because the average American was a lot smarter than they were and listened and was not bigoted, like was not held down by a whole set of training beliefs that were wrong. Like, what does it mean to build enterprise? What does it mean to have FTEs? What does it mean to go to market? What does it mean to get paid? Does your enterprise have to be parasitic? Should it be a parasitic? Should the host essentially be paying for the privilege of making your company larger and getting no value except for a weird feeling that you get from the parasite that you're better than you are? It's like essentially replicating the whole woke mind virus in the enterprise. They were open. By the way, they were also not only, they were not bigoted against some obvious truths that we've been saying for 20 years. By the way, these views when they were not popular.
Like what, Alex?
Like America is a better way to organize and live than any other place in the world. That even though it's better, we shouldn't be exporting, or especially it's better, we shouldn't export. We don't need to export our values abroad. We need to be strong enough in America so that nobody screws with us. including my views on the border. Like, we should have an actual border. We should have an actual culture. We should have meritocracy. We should not tolerate discrimination, and discrimination means against white males or whatever that is. We should build the best products. The products are going to have to be much better than any other products in the world, or they're not going to get implemented. I mean, all these things we've been saying for 20 years, and you know what? They pissed off a lot of people in the elite. You know who they didn't piss off? The same people we're also making AI work for. The truck drivers, the plumbers. I run into people all over America, and quite frankly, all over the world. People who have like normal means who are now rich because of Palantir. You know who's not rich because of Palantir? The people who read the analyst notes and the people who wrote them. And you know what? They're also still kind of angry, because while they're cruising along in their broken down car, the person cruising next to them in their beautiful Tesla is an actual worker in this, providing actual value, who may have gotten rich on Palantir. By the way, I love that. It is nothing makes me happier than looking in my mind's eye at the bank executive who's hanging out with their thing, who's living on the drip of some high interest loan, watching some person who's free, American, riding their car, who did not go to an elite school, but knew enough, because they didn't probably go to elite school, to buy Palantir shares. And now are going to make even more money using our platform.
Let me ask you this. I want to end here. There is a book coming. I want your view on this. It's a biography of you, The Philosopher in the Valley. When I read this book, is it going to be a fair, balanced portrait of Dr. Alex Karp?
Well, I mean, it'd only be fair and balanced if everything was good. Look, it's 70% accurate. It's very.
What's the 30 that's not?
He's got Trump derangement syndrome, obviously.
How does that come out?
Like anything that Palantir's done, it's basically, it's two books. It's one book about my childhood, which is a complex background, and came from nothing, and highly dyslexic and amorphous. It's like the whole thing, amorphous background, a little bit too amorphous racially, a little too Jewish, a little too very dyslexic, political. That part's fascinating. It's a little hyperbolic, but it's like 85-90% true. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, the Trump derangement syndrome. The fact that President Trump did these courageous things in Iran, and closed the border, and Palantir's played a role in these things. Obviously, not the role that the people did the work or the president, but that just sets off this mind virus. So Karp has to be evil. It's that part of the book obviously is but it's so obvious that you can kind of read through it, and there's some things, but I guess it's a good read. I think people read it will say, oh wow, that's really interesting. There's some things about Alex I didn't know, and you can assume all the things you don't like about me are on the inaccurate side, and all the things you do are accurate. But I think a lot of people are going to read it. I think people will enjoy reading it. Since
we're talking politics, there, final question: and we've been talking for a long time, the two of us, years. How have politics changed in Silicon Valley as you've watched it? What's the arc been like, and how has that, if at all, impacted the defense tech sector? Well, I mean, I'll tell you, the thing I get in most trouble for in my intellectual circles is the following statement. Silicon Valley, like the rest of the world, will listen to you if those ideas make you money. Now, of course, you still have to have convincing ideas that are true, but if those ideas are not tailored to real world things that work, in the Valley, quite frankly, is dollars, they will not listen. The fact is, and again, whenever I tell this to my intellectual friends, they stop talking to me because they want to believe that pure ideas change the world. Pure ideas don't change the world. I'll tell you what changes the world. Pure ideas backed by the military, in this case, hopefully the US. Doesn't mean you have to use the military. If you're strong enough, like this is where I'm like, Palantir is not a neocon project. Our project is to make America so strong we never fight. That's different than so almost strong enough so we always fight, right? So your ideas get listened to if you are dominant on the battlefield, and hopefully so dominant you don't have to use it, but if you do use it, people are like, yeah, I'm not screwing with those. Or if those ideas make someone a lot of money. You still have to have the ideas. In part, the intellectuals get so angry, my intellectual friends, it's like because they just think they write a book, someone reads it, and it changes the world. Nuh-uh. And that's not the way intellectual projects have ever worked. The ideas have to have a real world input. And so the fact that Palantir is at whatever we're at, this changes the Valley, because not only was the patriotism right, but the patriotism will make you rich. And that's what that impact on the Valley is going to be very long lasting.
And I'm very proud of that. But again, you can't just be proud of the idea. That was right from the beginning. It was been right since the history of our country that our way of organizing, especially our Constitution, is superior. Certainly superior for Americans. Again, superior for us doesn't mean we export it to everyone in the world, but superior for us since conception. But to make people listen up in their seats, you need to be dominant on the military and dominant on the economy. And Palantir plays a really but-for role in both of those areas. And that's something that I'm proud of, because not just because of the impact, but because the way in which it reverberates both in Silicon Valley and outside. And by the way, it also stands for, anyone can make it. One of the things that's in the biography is, read where I came from. Read that. There's no reason you can't advance in this society. And that's an important lesson for everybody, especially outside the Valley.